What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about ridiculous things that Americans have said to Canadians. Us Americans, we definitely tend to say some pretty questionable and ignorant things about Canada, but on the bright side, it also makes for some pretty good entertainment. So today, we're going to look at a whole Reddit discussion where a bunch of Canadians are talking about stories where they had interactions with Americans who said some pretty funny, ridiculous, kind of questionable stuff, which sounds pretty fun to me. So let's take a look. Starting with, I was at the mechanic one time in New Jersey, and my American wife was saying that I'm in the process of moving from Canada to the States. The mechanic responded, "I'm so sorry." Wait, this is an American mechanic. Wait. This is the Americans saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you're moving here from Canada." We were both almost going to do a real life raffle. If that's fantastic. If that happened in real life, that is amazing. That, I imagine, as a Canadian, that'd be like legitimately hilarious for an American to be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear you're having to move here. I'm sorry." A little too true as well. Stings a little too deep as well. Let's take a look at some others here. Things Americans have said to Canadians. I think it was when some people tried to get me to register to vote. And I said, "I can't vote. I'm Canadian." Right. And they said, "Well, Canadians can vote. In America, though?" And I said, "Not in the United States." Right. And they were like agog. Wait, what? The Americans were like telling this Canadian to vote, that they should try to register to vote, even though they're literally not a citizen of the United States. You know, it's almost kind of like wholesome in a way, where the Americans were like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Come vote in our national election. Why not? We're happy to have you." It's kind of like innocent in a way, but incredibly innocent as it is, it's also ignorant as well. Great use of agog. Underutilized word, right? That's what I was thinking. And the Americans were like agog. I was thinking, what a word. The Americans were very agog. I feel like agog needs to make a comeback. I've never even heard it before. Okay, what else do we have? Ridiculous things Americans have said to Canadians. I once had a conversation with a woman on the tech support line who could not believe that Canadians had to work on the 4th of July. Yeah, oh man, I hope it's not because this American tech support was thinking that Canadians celebrate the 4th of July. Sadly, this might just be a case of Americans not realizing that there are other parts of the world, other countries, that actually have their own holidays, and that America isn't the center of the universe. Not everyone celebrates the 4th of July or even has to care about it, to be perfectly honest. It'd be equivalent to, like, a Canada Day or something, right? Like, Americans don't get off work on Canada Day. I think Canadians do. That's a pretty important national holiday. Whereas I feel like most Canadians have heard or are aware of 4th of July, but the reverse never seems to be true. Americans never seem to know about holidays in other countries, like Canada Day or Canadian Thanksgiving, which was a month ago, before American Thanksgiving. That is still so funny to me. Oh, look, I had a client who is shocked that Canadian Thanksgiving was at the beginning of October. It's funny we call it Canadian Thanksgiving. It's Canadians, it's just like, "You mean Thanksgiving? What do you, not Canadian Thanksgiving, it's Thanksgiving." And Americans are like, no, we have Thanksgiving. And then Canadians are like, "That's American Thanksgiving." And you reverse it, and we're like, "Oh, how dare you? How could you?" All right, other stories of Canadians interacting with Americans. I worked for a big global company, and the Canadian employees kept getting invited to meetings in the middle of the night because the admin at the head office thought we were part of Europe. No. I mean, I always say Americans, including myself, are terrible, terrible at geography. I didn't know anything about Canadian geography for the longest time until I had to go out of my way to kind of learn about it. And it seems the default is that Americans don't know where. Man. But the thing, I was going to say where anything is, but Americans should know where Canada is. I think this is a special American. A very special American that you just got to pat on the head and be like, no, no, it's not part of Europe. I don't know why you're the administrator. You're like in a higher position and you're sending us meetings in the middle of the night because you think we're in European time zones. Canada is actually in very similar time zones to the United States, right? Like an hour ahead in some cases. I'm sure there's lots of time zone overlap between Canada and the United States, actually. It's like the most similar time zones we could possibly have. They might even be the same. I don't know for sure. I'm not going to go that far. Wow, that's bad. That's bad. Oh, no. That's crazy, actually. My father tried to rent a U-Haul trailer to drive from Pennsylvania to Nova Scotia. They would not rent it to him because they did not believe you could drive there. Wow. I would say this is absolutely ridiculous, but even I do not have a clear idea in my mind of what Nova Scotia looks like. But I know you can drive almost anywhere in Canada by car or a U-Haul trailer. And I would expect most Americans to assume that. I would have assumed that even if even like way back in the day when I didn't know anything. But Nova Scotia is not an island, I guess, huh? Let's pull up a little map here of Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is not an island, right? Oh my gosh. I gotta give the American like a little leeway here, because I gotta admit, I could have easily thought Nova Scotia was an island, just looking at it like this. But I think if you zoom up, if you really zoom in, yes, it is clearly attached right here. Clearly attached, not an island when you zoom in. And I'm sure to all Canadians this is very, very, very obvious. And I'm a little embarrassed I didn't know this one by heart, but I know Prince Edward Island is an island because it's in the name. Americans like me, we need it very simply laid out like that. Like, okay, that's an island. It's in the name. Nova Scotia, not an island. But not the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard an American come up with. There is more ridiculous things, but there's still really no excuse for it. Like, we should know where Nova Scotia is. Like, let's be honest. But at the same time, I don't. That's just sad. Goes to show how much the education system has failed the U.S. Mind you, it's working exactly as it's supposed to. What's that mean? Is our little American children and grown-ups supposed to be like poorly educated? It's working as intended. Is that the conspiracy? Yeah, I blame the U.S. education system. I take no personal responsibility. In true American fashion, I take no personal responsibility for this. It's the American education system failing me, but we had to study, American maps in geography growing up. So we all know, like, about that. I feel like there should have been a pretty substantial amount of time where we had to learn Canadian and Canada's geography and the provinces and territories, and then I wouldn't have to zoom in on Nova Scotia to make sure if it's an island or not. I could have been spared that embarrassment, but here we are. Next, ridiculous things Americans say to Canadians. My family was transferred to the U.S. for a year when I was in high school. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm going to start doing that. On one of the first days of classes, someone said to me, "Oh, you're from Montreal. Do you know," insert name of person. Let's say Bob. "You're from Montreal. Do you know Bob?" Since I only knew one person with that name, I've offered up the last name. The response was, "Yes, that's the guy. That's Bob. I just spent the summer with him at camp." So I perpetuated the stereotype. Oh no, this is the I know what he's talking about. This is the stereotype. Whenever Canadians come to the United States, Americans always know some Canadian in their life, someone else from Canada. So when we meet another Canadian, we have to say, "Do you know Bill? He's from Canada. Do you know Bill?" Like as if all Canadians know each other. Like Canada is some small place where it's like, "Oh, you're Canadian. You must know Josh." Like that is the stereotype, and it's so silly. But in this case, it turned out to be true by the sound of it. He actually did know Bob from Montreal, which is pretty hilarious and maybe unfortunate. At a Canadian party in southern Ontario, my boyfriend mentioned he was from Saskatchewan. Someone said, "Do you know Bill from Saskatchewan?" He replied, "Usually I tell you to F off for thinking that I know some random person from Saskatchewan. But yeah, I actually do know Bill, and we went to high school together." How does this happen? Wait a minute, maybe it's not a stereotype. Maybe it's just true. Maybe all Canadians just know each other. Very tiny, small little place, you know? No, no, there's like 38 million Canadians at this point. 40 million Canadians. That's pretty unbelievable that happened for two people in this thread, actually. Wow. On vacation in Florida, a woman asked where we were from. We said Canada. She said, "Is that overseas?" She didn't believe that we had driven to Florida. These ones are really, like, bad. These are really kind of disheartening ones. This is the second one, at least, where it's an American who literally does not know where Canada is. And I'm sad to say I feel like that's not completely uncommon. I know that sounds absurd. I know that sounds insane. It is insane. But I feel like and when I say a lot, I mean like, compared to how many Americans should know this stuff, there's a lot that don't know, even where Canada or parts of Canada are, which is pretty incredible in a bad way. Pretty incredible. She didn't believe they had driven to Florida from Canada. She asked if Canada was overseas. Another American that thinks Canada is in Europe or something? I find it really funny. Not because it shows how little Americans know about Canada. It shows how little some Americans know about their own country. Exactly. Like, we share, I think, the longest border on Earth. The United States shares it with Canada. And it's basically showing ignorance about our own continent. And a ton of America borders Canada. It's pretty important stuff. Remember Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader show? A lady was asked to name the country bordering the USA to the north. And I can't even talk because this is so ridiculous. She had to ask the kids to help her name the country bordering the US to the north. That's unbelievable. That's not on the same level of not knowing if Nova Scotia is an island. That's bad. That's bad, but not knowing where Canada is special. Special level of ignorance, which I can't even really explain and don't even want to think about. While working in MA, what is that? Not Maine, Massachusetts, I think? It's too hard to remember 50 little symbols for states. While working in Massachusetts, a coworker told me his wife was from Canada. I asked which province, and he didn't know. She just said, "She's from Canada." This is his wife! This is his wife. How does he... He doesn't know. His wife is from Canada. He doesn't even know where in Canada his wife is from. This is unbelievable. This is beyond ridiculous. The name of this is... The topic is ridiculous things Americans have said to Canadians. This is beyond ridiculous, honestly. If she never felt the need, then it's Ontario. Because to her, that's Canada. Could that be... I don't... How could it never come up in casual conversation with your wife? "Oh, what part of Canada are you from? Is that just the forbidden place to Americans? We don't talk about the place that must not be named to the north. We don't have discussions about that." What else do we have? More ridiculous stuff that Americans have said to Canadians. Americans I've spoke to who don't live near the border often don't have any idea where major Canadian cities are in relation to them. This is 100% true. I can attest to this from personal experience. I've never lived in a state that borders Canada, and I have a terrible, terrible frame of reference for where Canadian cities are. I'm getting better though. I'm getting better. For example, when I was in Portland, Oregon last year, my Airbnb host was surprised I had driven there to Portland from Vancouver, British Columbia. She was shocked to learn it's only a couple hours north of Seattle. Only a 5-hour drive total. Wow, yeah, and that the Amtrak station a block away has trains to Vancouver. She thought Vancouver was several days' drive away. That's just weird, because it's like, that's another thing I say is Americans don't even seem to take advantage of like getting a passport and visiting Canada. Americans do a lot of our vacationing inside of America, it seems, because it is like 50 states, and at times it feels like America is 50 different countries put together sometimes. And there's a lot of people to see and a lot of things to see. But Americans really need to like figure out that there's a lot of amazing stuff in Canada that's not that far away. That feels like a whole different place, a whole vacation. Maybe Canadians are just screaming right now. Stop! Don't tell Americans to come. Don't tell them to visit us, please, please. It's okay. I hear ya. But then again, I've heard some weird stuff about other parts of Canada from Torontonians. I once talked to someone there who thought there was no road to Thunder Bay and that it was a fly-in community. This is weird stuff from Torontonians. I talked to someone who thought there was no road to Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay. What is Thunder Bay? Okay, here's Thunder Bay in Ontario. Why would you think, as someone living in Ontario, that you can't get to Thunder Bay? Is it considered like hard to get to? It just looks like a regular place on the coast. Like, why would you think you have to fly in here? Is there something about Thunder Bay? Community, I don't know. Is it secluded or that's strange. I don't even understand the reference or why you would think you have to fly there. It looks attached to the rest of the earth. What else do we have? Older women down south. Do you have hockey in Canada? Oh my gosh, isn't that borderline an insult or something? Or at that point, if you're a Canadian interacting with an American who's like from the south, like, hey there, do you have hockey up there in Canada? Like something like that. At that point, you just gotta smile and be like, yes, we do. We do have hockey. That's all you can really do at that point. What a sort of a strange question, but not like insulting, I guess. Well, like I was saying, it's because it's like somehow denying the existence of hockey. That's where I'm like, maybe that would be insulting to Canadians, but at least they're asking, I guess. I moved to LA when I was 15. At school, one girl asked me when I had moved down there. I told her in the summer. She asked, "Oh, our summer or yours?" Oh, Americans that think Canada somehow defies the laws of nature and has different summer and winter times. Sadly, I can almost see where like Americans would think this. It's worse than the time zone, than not knowing the time zones are pretty the same between Canada and the United States for the most part. But thinking that we have different seasons somehow, like we'd have to be on, different sides of the planet for that. And well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe, this might be another American that thinks Canada is over by Asia or something, There's nothing that I'm not willing to believe at this point. But with that, I think I'm going to stop right there before my brain melts any further from some of these ridiculous things Americans have actually said to Canadians must have the patience of a saint when interacting with some of these Americans. But I do find it always pretty hilarious and entertaining to look at some of these things, and I don't know. I feel like part of it, maybe some of this is me subconsciously trying to make up for the American ignorance going on here and not knowing about Canada. I'm here to just be like, I kind of understand why some Americans think Canada is on another planet. I understand. Now there's really no good excuse for it. Americans are weird and our education is weird, and we probably just tend to focus too much of our attention on American stuff. And we need to look outwards. Otherwise, we end up saying funny, ridiculous things like this and ending up on the internet, which is all fine to me, I guess, because I actually enjoyed this quite a bit. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment, perhaps with your own personal story. An interaction you had with an American where they said something ridiculous or ignorant about Canada, or just your thoughts on any of these stories, honestly. That'd be fun to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and Canadian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.